It's my pleasure to reintroduce Melissa Luxmoore. Melissa is a naturopath, and she's going to continue talking about ketogenic diets and brain health, and her topic is diet and epilepsy. And this is a personal story from Melissa. Melissa, take it away.
Cool. Are they seeing my notes?
Yep, they're seeing the presentation and you in the corner.
Okay, cool. Hi. My name's Melissa. I am a naturopath in Canberra, also an online naturopath. I am going to be talking to you today about the keto diet and epilepsy. And as many of you know, there's keto diet and there's keto diet. Not all keto diets are created equal. And when it comes to keto that hospitals and dietitians advocate, let's just say there was absolutely no way my kid was eating that. There are so many more options that your local hospital and mainstream dietitian will offer you. But today I'm going to share with you my family's journey through keto diet for epilepsy. It's just one version. And I worked out what I wanted from the keto diet and what I didn't want from the keto diet, and then I went from there. And before I go any further, I want to, it's really important to me to tell you from the start that I am not a keto diet expert. I'm not an epilepsy expert. I am an expert in my daughter, in her type of epilepsy, and in what's best for her. So today I'm going to be taking you through a very personal family journey of keto diet and epilepsy, not a technical journey. So I'm going to start off with giving you some background on my girl. This is Ayla. She is 15 years old, little adventurer and world traveler. She has a rare congenital brain condition called polymicrogyria, and she only had a 1% chance of not having seizures. Her seizures began at 5 years old, and we kicked off with 1 to 3 seizures every single night. Each seizure would last between 2 minutes and 40 minutes with varying severity. And being the very first time that I'd ever had any contact with epilepsy, it was a very, very scary time. And we decided from the outset to go down the route of meds because we were frightened. So we started with meds. We tried most of them. And Ayla has intractable epilepsy, which means that she didn't respond to even one of them, not one. And we noticed personality changes with every medication that we tried. And then they wanted to try cocktails of them, and that's where I just drew the line. So while we were trialing the meds, we've tried a few different things. We started GAPS diet in an attempt to heal and seal her gut and reduce inflammation to her brain. It is a relatively low carb diet in the beginning stages, but we didn't really notice any changes with that. But we did notice that when she was ill, she would stop eating. And when she stopped eating, she had seizures, sometimes for up to 2 weeks. So that was a clue to me that perhaps keto would work for her. And at the time of trying all of these different drugs, we found, I was actually reading the Wahl's protocol by Terry Wahls. So Terry recovered from secondary progressive multiple sclerosis using the dietary program that she created. She's a clinical professor of medicine in the US, and she actually conducts clinical trials on her dietary program for MS-related symptoms. Her diet is based on paleo keto. So, and it's used to get MS in remission and get people out of wheelchairs. And Terry refers to her version of the keto diet as nutritional keto. And it focuses on getting lots and lots of nutrition through plant foods whilst maintaining ketosis. And this is exactly what I was after. I wanted a ketogenic diet that would still provide all of the micronutrients that Ayla was going to need to maintain her growth and to support healthy immune function and healthy bones, and hopefully not lose any weight, because that was a big thing for her. She's always been underweight. So the tricky thing from this point is, how do you approach your specialists? We did it, this is the way we did it, and this is the way I recommend that other people do it, is first of all, don't ask them if you're allowed to do keto. Tell them you are doing keto and you would like to invite them to support you in doing so. And if they refuse, find another specialist. Find somebody who will. If they're skeptical but supportive, then you as patient or carer for a patient need to make it seemingly easy to support you through this process. So ours first suggested that we do Atkins diet. I felt that Atkins diet was nothing more than meat and dairy, and I wanted more for that, for Ayla, than that. We were also paleo at the time, so we weren't really having any dairy anyway. So I decided that wasn't really going to suit us. It's important to know that you don't have to do it their way, but it definitely helps if you're seen to be doing the right thing. So for example, they'll request lots of testing and you should do it. It's important that you get a baseline of your child's health before going ahead. They're checking for metabolic disorders that may be contraindicated for ketogenic diet. They're checking your child's nutrient levels. Some of these tests are expensive and you should still do them. They're worth doing for the safety of your child, and they keep your tentatively supportive specialist on side. They'll also send you to see a hospital dietitian, and you should go. You most definitely don't have to follow the hospital protocol on the ketogenic diet. Just nod and smile and be educated. Our dietitian didn't have a clue, not one clue. In her defense, however, I was a naturopath focusing on nutritional healing for up to 10 years prior to this, and I took a lot of research and I had lots of information, so I taught her. She recommended lots of revolting keto supplements that I wouldn't feed to a rat, so I nodded and I smiled and I took her pamphlets and we went home and did the Wahls protocol. So, one big thing before we started on ketogenic diet, I found research that suggested there was a possible danger for children and young adults up to their early 20s that were on a combination of sodium valproate or epilum and ketosis, and that it may cause liver failure. And Ayla was on epilum. Wasn't working, but she was on epilum. So we then needed to take another 18 months to get her off the epilum before we could start, just as a precaution. Our pediatrician disagreed with us. He wanted to go ahead anyway. I held firm. I have to go with my gut instincts. And if the research says there's a chance of liver failure, we're not going there. So we directed the way that would run. So what happened when we started? Well, first of all, I nearly had a breakdown. Despite all of my naturopathic experience, all of my experience with putting clients on diets, putting myself on a diet, switching to keto was freaking hard. It was really, really hard. But we kept at it. And within 2 weeks, we had massive changes. We were down from 1 to 3 seizures, from 1 to 3 seizures a night to 1 to 3 seizures a week, which was huge, absolutely huge. The other thing was that she was more alert. She was tracking her teachers around the room. She had more energy. She was interacting more with kids around her. But that's not where the magic ended. The magic was also in our home life as well. We were starting to get a bit more sleep because she would have nocturnal seizures. Our overall stress over her health was a lot lower, and we could do more as a family, and travel was back on the menu. with the keto diet, just a side note on testing. When testing for ketones, I recommend testing blood, not urine. Ayla's disability meant that capturing urine wasn't an easy process, but testing blood was really a piece of cake. And so it was through this, it was a bit of a blessing in disguise, but through this learning and reading, I realized that when we measure ketones in the urine, we're actually measuring the ketones that the body's getting rid of, not the ones that's necessarily burning for energy. And then the question for me was, is getting rid of that many ketones a good thing? And why isn't the body using those ketones for energy? So I found that measuring ketones through blood was much more accurate. And we also gave us a better idea of what ketones were available. And it meant that I could start playing with her diet and seeing what I could add into her diet, what level of ketones we needed to be working at. So we started adding in things like berries to see if we made changes to her ketone levels. And also, you know, she was hovering around 1 for her ketones. And I wanted to know, did more ketones mean less seizures? Did less ketones mean more seizures? And it didn't seem to matter. She needed to be sort of somewhere between about 0.5 and 1, and she was getting what we term adequate control. We never got full control of her epilepsy. We have never gotten full control of her epilepsy. Now we're going to talk about some hiccups, because there are hiccups and there's things that we've had to work with. This is not a case of, you put your child on keto and you'll never have a seizure again. That's not our story. It might be a story for somebody else. That's not our story. So yeah, it's not always perfect. Hiccup number 1, adjusting and reverting. Within weeks of seeing our magical results, we noticed a gradual increase of seizures as the weeks went by. Her brain just readjusts. So she never went back to 3 seizures nightly, but enough that you could notice it. Her brain seems to adjust to what it considers to be its homeostatic state, which is really quite annoying. So rather than giving up, we decided to play around with it a little bit, and we started to keto cycle. I don't know whether that was a thing or not. It's just something we made up, or whether I saw it somewhere, but we started to keto cycle. So she would do 8 weeks in keto diet, and then we would have a 1-week carb party. When I say carb party, it was pretty much a paleo carb party, except for the occasional sushi being her favorite food. But there were definitely carbs involved. So what we noticed was that she would have a slight increase in seizures, never back to the 3 seizures a night. And then we would introduce keto and we were back to 1 to 3 seizures a week. And it was pretty much immediate. So she's in ketosis for around 8 weeks. She has a 1-week break, and then we go back to ketosis again. It's not ideal, but it's better than having 1 to 3 seizures a night. The next hiccup we had was constipation. Now, her constipation is not solely because of ketogenic diet. She's always had issues with constipation, but we did know that keto increased it just a little bit. So we thought, was it water? Well, no, she was drinking plenty of water. We then started to play around with prebiotics and fibers. Inulin phos was fine. It didn't affect her ketone levels. Didn't really make much change to her constipation either. So we went to lactulose, which was much better and no effect on her ketones. GOS was a bit of an oopsie. We lost all ketone control, and then we realized it had glucose in it. And this is why yesterday I talked about not supplementing, using the supplemental forms of GOS if you're treating diabetes or doing the ketone diet or keto diet. We also played around with slippery elm and psyllium, and that just blocked her up more. We also experimented with probiotics, and I had to get very strain specific with the probiotics. So now she's on 2 different probiotics. She's on lactulose and chia seeds, and we have a very, very delicate balance. But our search for constipation solutions also led us down other tracks. And that was minerals and salts. So when we introduced more salt into her diet, her bowels were ever so slightly better. But not only that, we also noticed that she would be really cranky and tired. And this is a kid that's just happy as. And the second you increased her minerals and her salts, she was back to happy, relaxed, and fine again. So she's on a mineral supplement with calcium, magnesium, lots of micronutrients, plus she gets lots of salt in her diet. And it's also important to note that when you do start doing keto diet, you get thirsty, so drink more water. Now we've reached our biggest hiccup of all time. We've hit puberty. And all bets are off. Nothing works, absolutely nothing. She is still keto cycling, but we're now back to experimenting with meds as well. And I understand that this may sound like a fail to many of you, but she's still having less than 3 seizures a night, and that's a win. She usually has 1 nightly. Sometimes she has none. Sometimes it's a 2-minute episode. Sometimes it's a 40-minute massive seizure that scares the absolute shit out of you and you don't sleep for the next week. Sometimes it's just a funny little jerk in the middle of the day, which is unusual because she doesn't have seizures in the day, which now apparently she does. But we're still better off than when we first started. So it's not perfect. It's a roller coaster of emotions, frustrations, and learning to surrender. And I'm pretty sure that's why we've handled 2020 pretty bloody fine. So you're probably wondering, what does Ayla's keto diet look like? It's actually a pretty generalized diet, just without all the starches. I try to keep her diet and her life just like everybody else. I use Pinterest to find keto versions of all the family favorites. Ayla's favorite is pizza, so cauliflower pizza it is. The whole family enjoys cauliflower pizza, so that's not an issue. Afternoon snacks could be as simple as paleo bread with some every mite and butter. She could have a keto smoothie. She could have what she thinks is really special is egg noodles. It's literally egg and salt cooked on a pan and cut into strips. It's no big deal, but she loves it. And I've learned not to overcomplicate things. We don't have to find special treats. I don't need special treats in my life. She doesn't need special treats in her life. I don't have time for special treats. I am a busy working mum. I already have a huge mental load. And so 90% chocolate's pretty much the special treat. I just keto-fy pretty much everything. We will crumb fish with desiccated coconut. We make spaghetti bolognese with zoodles. I will serve a stew with a cauli mash instead of a potato mash. I add extra fats using butter, olive oil. I buy the fatty cuts of meat and I make healthy mayos and dressings. And she loves to chow down on just half an avocado. And I use coconut milks and creams. So this is currently what her basic everyday diet looks like. So her breakfast is scrambled eggs, a small piece of preservative and sugar-free bacon, a stack of above ground veggies, and that could literally be anything. Usually it comes out of the veggie garden. And I throw some MCT oil in there because that means that we have just that little bit more control and I can give her things like berries without it affecting her. Her school lunch will usually include a chia pudding or a coconut yogurt with berries, half an avocado, and a variety of leftovers from dinner. And then dinner is usually, a variety of meats, above ground veggies, and that can be like barbecue and salad. Her favorite is crack slaw, which is like a mince-based dish with heaps of cabbage and butter and deliciousness in it. Soup, stews, keto tacos, pulled pork burritos, pork sausages. So you can see that it's a really basic family meal plan. So you're probably also wondering, how do we integrate this into our family life? And is the whole family keto? And the answer is no, we are definitely not all keto. I think my husband would die. He's not paleo, he's not keto, and he has no desire to be, and that's cool, that's his choice. So the way I've learned to integrate this into our family life without becoming a restaurant is this. Every mealtime centers around a keto meal. And then I add a carbohydrate for those members of the family who want it. So for example, if I make a stir fry, I will make cauliflower rice, and then I will make a combo of white rice and black rice for those who want it. If I make a stew, there's cauli mash, and then there's either a potato mash or a sweet potato mash. If it's spaghetti bolognese, there's zoodles, and there's a grain-free pasta for those who want it. So I am not a restaurant. I do not have time to be a restaurant. I have no desire to cook more than one meal at night time. I don't have time or the brain space. So I cook a keto meal and I add carb to it, and then everybody's happy. Integrating this into our greater life, with Ayla, a dietary digression doesn't mean a huge change in her seizure pattern. And for us, balance is key to maintaining this on a long-term basis. So we like to travel. We like to adventure. We go camping, we go fishing, we road trip and camp all the way to Queensland. Travel within country is pretty easy. We learn to do things like self-catering, but seriously, who wants to cook every meal on a holiday? I don't. When we visit people in Australia or my family, it's too easy. We run it similar to home. If you're going out to a restaurant, use your words and a sweet attitude and ask for what you want. You will get it. Overseas travel is a little trickier, but it is doable. So in foreign countries where they don't speak your lingo or you don't speak theirs, it's tricky to ask for what you want. So what we did was we would order a variety of things that sounded relatively keto friendly, and we would play swapsies at the table until Ayla had a beautiful meal in front of her. We would self-cater breakfast in the morning. So cooking breakfast each morning meant that we would start the day keto, and we saved dollars as well. And then where it was trickier, for instance, southern Italy, when you're in the middle of this tiny little village and everything's shut down for the winter, you keto cycle. That was our carb week. So we did a trip to Europe in 2018. We did 9 weeks, 4 countries with a wheelchair, kids and cases in tow, and none of us were missing out on anything. In our case, her having a little bit of carbohydrate here and there is not life-threatening. So we make allowances for living, and it's not every day. It's just one day. So in Spain, she had paella. In Portugal, she had a Portuguese custard tart, which I can say she chowed down on. She had gelato in Italy more than once, and she had baklava in Crete. So she didn't miss out. And we have a philosophy in our house that birthdays are for cake, and she loves cake, and she's getting a cake, and it's not a keto cake. We go all out and we give her whatever cake she damn well pleases. School. Ayla is in a mainstream school. She has always been in a mainstream school. I believe in surrounding her with as much normality as possible for her sake, for my sake, and for the community's sake. So she's currently in high school and she's doing a hospitality program, and the recipes are already really gross, sad diet foods, and they're definitely not keto friendly. So the school works with me. They give me the recipe plan for the semester. I go home and I find keto options for that. I send the recipe back to the school, and then they buy all of the ingredients so that Ayla can cook and eat that food. She has an intellectual disability. It's really important to all of us that she understands I cook it, I eat it. So we work with the school to make sure that that happens. And that's pretty much us. That's our journey. As I said, it's not a technical look at epilepsy in the keto diet. It's a very personal journey. It's the way that we've decided to do it, but I hope that you've managed to take something out of that that can help you to take the dive into at least testing the ketogenic diet if you have a child or you yourself have epilepsy. It is worth doing. It's not a piece of cake, literally, and there are hiccups, but you can work with them, and you're not always looking for the ideal situation being no seizures. You know, a massive reduction in seizures is a massive win. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. There were some really powerful messages in there. You're not a restaurant. Actually, if you cook real food and add in the carbs, that's a really simple strategy for doing your family-friendly low carb. And what a remarkable story you have there.